welcome everyone. This is episode 1 of the Employer's Playbook podcast. I'm Matt Lockaby, your host. I'm the founder and managing partner of Lockaby PLLC.
And I'm Grace Bandy. I'm the marketing coordinator at Lockaby PLLC.
Awesome. Well, we are here in Lexington, Kentucky with Jon Fox. Jon has been a personal friend and colleague for several years now. We're in this great space you have over in Beaumont. So thanks for having us.
Sure.
Felt like it was like a road trip for us today.
Yes.
This was great. So Jon, kick us off. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for having me on the show. I was joking about how it's I don't know whether or not to be complimented or discouraged that I was the first guest on the podcast, but I'm honored to be on it. So I've been in Lexington for since I was 14. So basically from here, originally from North Carolina, but got into the business world which is why we're here to talk about business, and so I got into the business world in 2008 when I started a company. I was super dumb and decided to start my own business and with a partner, and it was in the AV world, and so a lot of higher end audio, video, smart home, lighting control, security, all that fun stuff for mostly residential new construction and remodeling projects. Clients would bring us in to help to simplify and to put in a lot of cool stuff. And so I ran that with my partner for about 11 years, and I'm sure we'll get a lot more into that story and more of the details there. But I ran that for about 11 years, and then into 2018, I transitioned out and started a coaching business, and then that's still what I'm doing now. And the thing I do primarily is I'm an EOS implementer, so I work with leadership teams to help them get more aligned around their vision, to implement tools and processes that help them to gain more traction and accountability and discipline throughout the business, and just to become healthier, more open and honest, and more vulnerable with each other, and to really help live their EOS life. And so that's what I do full time. I work with those leadership teams and kind of take them on a journey to help them become their best and to run a great company.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you view it as a compliment and as a good thing that you are our first guest. And one of the things that I remember telling Grace was that we've had coffee, 3 or 4 times, and we were in a referrals group together for a little while too. And I was telling Grace, every time I leave a coffee meeting with you, you have always asked me questions about my business. Mm-hmm. Or me personally and how that impacts the business. And I always walk away thinking, man, that was such a great conversation. And I was like, well, of course it was. He just asked me questions for an hour. So I'm like, now I get to turn it around.
I wouldn't call it a conversation. I'm kidding.
It's a therapy session, and you let it, with aplomb. So yeah, I'm excited to get to turn the table now and put the spotlight on you. So can we go back to 2008 or so when you launched this home technology company? What was it that made you want to do that? What started you on this entrepreneurial journey?
I mean, to be honest, I was just a moron. I had no idea what I was getting myself into at all. The job that I didn't really go to college. I went for 1 semester at UK and then got academic probation and never went back. So there's that. And then just started working various jobs. I guess higher ed just wasn't for me. But the job that I worked right before I started that business was I was a contractor for the cable company. And so I was, had my truck and would go around at homes and install cable boxes and home internet and, running the lines from the pole to the house and all that fun stuff. So I was in homes all the time, and I was helping them hook up their TVs and their stereos and getting everything working. And many times I was asked to do a lot more for them than what I was really there to do. And so I ended up learning a lot about just how all the AV world works. And so I would, do side projects for people that come help mount their TVs or run this cable from this part of the house to this part of the house. And so I just learned a lot. And so I got to a point where me and a good friend of mine, Josh, he had more of an IT background. And so he, networking and Wi-Fi and computers and all that stuff. So we decided to go out on our own and just try. Of course, here's the thing is we had no dependents. Neither one of us were married yet. Neither one of us had kids yet. And so, there was no one else saying like, hey, when's the money coming in? And so we could afford to take a little bit more of a risk, because the worst case scenario is that we didn't eat much that month, right? That was the worst case scenario. And so, so we decided to go on our own and had no idea what we were doing at all. Didn't know how to get clients. We had no clients. We just had a passion for doing our own thing. And so that's kind of how it started, was just a little bit of a passion to do things on our own and see what this whole entrepreneurial thing was about.
Right. Well, but I love that. That's like, you had this seed based on experience, and the two of you kind of combined, your respective forces into, create one really good idea that, in my experience, people need and don't always know where to turn. But so tell me about that founding, though. You've talked about it as just being kind of young and dumb in that time period. But was there an operating agreement? Did you guys think about like what an exit might look like years down the road, or was it just, we
didn't even know what an entry looked like, much less an exit.
Yeah.
No, there was no operating agreement. Just friendship and a goodwill. And my grandmother, because we frankly didn't have much money, and actually I think that shortly before, my truck had gotten repoed because I couldn't make the payments for a few months. And so finally they took my truck, and I had to borrow money from a friend to even go get it back. So that was like really embarrassing and humiliating and all the things. And so we had no money. And so to start the business, we needed some stuff. We needed a printer and like a few supplies and a little bit of inventory and some tools and things like that. And so I asked my grandmother, who was very cheap and frugal, for some money. And of course she was like, I'm not made of money. And I was like, I'm asking for $2,000. Come on. Give me a break. You don't have many grandchildren. And so it was actually my dad that had to convince her to do that and to help me out. And so she gave us $2,000 to like buy some initial stuff. And that was it. And so me and Josh both lived in the same townhouse. So we were roommates as well, right off Tates Creek Road. And, our offices were our bedrooms, and our third bedroom was our supply, like inventory warehouse.
You could write that off as a business expense, your rent expense.
Sure,
too.
We could have and should have, but probably didn't. So there was nothing.
Right.
We had nothing in place.
But that's usually when like the best things happen. Like you have nowhere else you can go, so you just make it work. Also, like as a grandma's boy, I feel like that hits home.
Yeah.
Like grandma's always there, even if they're reluctant at first, right?
She was very reluctant.
So tell me how it goes, because you have this founding, and then 10 years later or so, you decide that you're going to step away and pursue something else. And I definitely want to talk about that. But tell me about those first few years, right? Whether it was just marketing or business development, or you've described a situation where like you have to succeed, because if you don't, then there's kind of this status quo, right? Mm-hmm. So like I think it's something a lot of business owners can identify with, this idea that this is on me if I'm going to make this work.
Yeah.
I'm just going to figure this out. Was that
totally?
Is that?
I mean, and we didn't like consciously know that's what was going on. We didn't understand the psychology of it all. But I was just telling a friend recently, there's a Dan Sullivan quote, he's the founder of Strategic Coach, which I'm a part of now. And he said, there's no incentive like no alternative. And I think that's where many entrepreneurs are like they have an idea that they want to do something. They're tired of the status quo. They're tired of working for the man, and they put themselves in a position where it's really tough and it's stressful, but you're in a position where there's healthy pressure to succeed. Like there's no alternative but to go do the things that are uncomfortable, to go generate revenue and to get clients and to do the things that most people are unwilling to do. Mm-hmm. And so we were there. Like, again, we didn't understand the psychology of what was happening, but you just do what you have to do to figure it out.
I can appreciate that. And my father-in-law had several businesses, and one of the things that he has always said that always resonated with me was, if you're too comfortable, mm-hmm. It's not that you can't or won't be successful, mm-hmm. but that it will be a longer road to the success that you have in your mind, because you can pay the mortgage and pay for the groceries and provide whatever it is you're providing for your family. And it's not until like your back's against the wall that you really find out kind of really what you're made of.
And that's why it's really tough for people in their mid to late 30s, 40s, 50s who they have the idea of starting their own business, and the freedom of it seems really enticing, but then they've got this $150,000, $200,000 a year coming in from their existing job. It's like, okay, like, how are we going to make that? Like, we are comfortable right now. We've got a boat. We've got all of our bills paid. Like, we go on vacations. Like, we're putting money into savings and our Roths. Like, we're set up for retirement. Like, we're doing all the things. Like, what's going to happen to our life if I jump off a cliff and go to nothing, start from scratch? And that's just no matter how eager you are to jump into entrepreneurialism, like, it's a real thing. It's a real fear. I have many friends that would love to own their own business, but they don't. For that reason.
Well, and I've had conversations with friends or colleagues who specifically call me to ask me about starting their business and what mm-hmm. it's like. And sometimes it's because we do this work on a corporate level, and sometimes it's just because I'm their friend and a business owner. But that's usually the one theme that always comes through is I'm comfortable, mm-hmm. but I see the freedom and flexibility that this could provide. Mm-hmm. Like, how do I get there? What's that obstacle I have to get over to, like, psychologically get me to that point? And mm-hmm. I'm not sure I have a good answer to that, but I'm curious what your answer was. I mean, you had the freedom and flexibility and the time and I guess the grit to make this, to give this a go. Is that fair?
Totally. One of our first coaches, he had a proverb that just was made up, his proverb, I guess. But he said that people either have a lot of time and little money, or they have a lot of money and little time. And it's the truth. Like, we had a lot of time and very little money, and we used our time to generate more money. But then you get to a place where you're generating more money and you're busy all the time. And with people who are older in life, many times they have more money and they're comfortable, but they don't have the time to go out and just start something new that takes grinding mm-hmm. and networking and learning and working after hours. And it's just, there's like a choose your hard sort of situation that arises where, like, it's hard not having freedom and being my own boss, and it's hard taking a risk mm-hmm. to going and being my own boss, especially in this season of my life. Like, what heart am I going to choose, and which one will my spouse endorse?
Your choice is not always the choice of the others around you.
Right.
Yeah, but that's I don't know. That really resonates with me though, because we really are trying to sell entrepreneurialism and business ownership, but it is. I think you're exactly right. It is a choosing your hard, and for me personally, I would rather choose the hard and the discipline today to mm-hmm. get where I would like to be mm-hmm. tomorrow or 5 years from now. But so, okay, but let's go back. You've started the company. You guys have been operating for a few years. It was a 50-50 partnership, I assume?
It was, yeah.
Okay. We regularly warn clients about 50-50 partnerships.
As you should.
And we give them a lengthy list of topics to discuss with each other before they embark on that. So
That's really politely put.
it is. Well,
You should consider these topics.
and then let's talk amongst yourselves, and then we'll get back together. No, but there had to have been a point in those first few years where there was not just like minor squabbles, but maybe even more significant or major disagreements. What was that first issue for you all, and tell me how you navigated it?
Gosh, that was so long ago. So I'll be totally honest. If you are familiar with the Enneagram, like I'm a 1 wing 9, so there's a lot of peacemaker in me. And then my partner Josh, I would say he also had a similar amount of that. And so early on, there was a lot of, not a lot, but there was just underlying tension that would brew that was never really dealt with. And we also didn't have the tools to deal with them well. We didn't have a coach yet who was saying, you need to deal with those things. Like, you all are not on the same page. And so we kind of just did our own thing, and hoped that we would align. But there was a lot of things that we just didn't talk about, or I would just say, well, you handle that and I'll handle this. And so I don't know. We didn't really fight much. We did have some larger pieces of tension like later on in the business, but typically what I found is that it's more clarity that actually creates more tension, because it starts to expose the weaknesses and the impurities and the places that maybe you thought you were aligned but you really weren't. So more clarity, more tools, more coaching actually exposes and brings those things to the surface that need to be dealt with. But when you don't have those things, it's like pretty easy to hide. Like, you're not even aware really of the things that you might even disagree on. So you kind of just show up and just do stuff every day.
Right. Oh, that's a really good point, though. I mean, I never really thought about it that way. It was almost like, okay, there's problems. We'll figure out how we address it. We move on. But yeah, if you're ignorant, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but if you're just blind to what the real underlying issues are, that clarity can be really powerful, but kind of in a negative way too for the relationship.
And there's also the excitement early on. Like, there's the thrill of starting something new and working together and getting the new client and getting that next check that's like the biggest one you've ever got, and like starting the project. And so there's a bunch of thrills that have not become normal yet. And so those can mask a lot of the underlying tensions that exist, because you're just living into that joy and the thrill and excitement of something new. Mm-hmm. But it's not until things normalize over time and you get used to new clients coming in, you get used to larger checks, and you get used to working together, that you're starting to be forced to actually work on the business and work on your relationship and deal with things.
Right.
I was going to compare it to like a roommate situation,
Yeah.
but you guys were also roommates
We
at
were.
the time.
It's multi-layered.
So you couldn't decide if he was annoying because he didn't do his dishes or a business related thing. But I've experienced before, I've not started my own business, but I've had roommates before. Mm-hmm. And it's all really fun when you first move in together. Right. But then like after a couple months and after one too many times, having the dishes in the sink and everything like that, it can get really, really frustrating. So how did you like start to address that? Because you can't just go up to someone and be like, this is really annoying me about you. How would you like start those conversations?
Probably with lots of passive aggression, from what I recall. I think we had a lot of passive aggressive remarks toward each other, passing in the hall or whatever. So
how would you recommend to avoid the passive aggressiveness?
I don't know. It's hard for me to answer that question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just similar to any other relationship, learning the tools and reading books that help you engage with healthier conflict. Yeah. Crucial Conversations was a book that was a game changer for me years ago. My wife Erica and we did some counseling a while ago and kind of learned some tools for better communication. But I don't know. I think it's just kind of a journey that you take, and learning and growing and reading books about it is like the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm a reader, and
Yeah.
I tend to take more from the books that I read, and figuring out a way to implement, like if I can implement one thing from what I just read, what can I do now?
Yeah.
As opposed to just reading something and then like amassing all of this, content that is you're gonna forget about because of the daily grind and hustle and bustle. But reading something and thinking, oh, is there one thing I can do like right now that would make the business better or me a better leader or something like that?
It's so true. I mean, because you look at people in their 50s and 60s who still don't know how to have hard conversations with someone. And you're like, this is so immature. And you can just tell, like, they've never read a book in their life to like help them become develop themselves.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is going on? And so it really does take a growth mindset to become better at those types of things, in my opinion. But also, like, it's one thing like to grow in your approach and having conversations, but it's another thing to recognize and have tools to help you get to the root of why you're having the disagreement to begin with. And typically it's because there's some sort of mismanaged expectation. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of the things I love about what I do now, which we can talk about later, is I'm helping leadership teams implement tools that give them a baseline for being on the same page. So whenever there is conflict, it's not me versus you or you versus me. It's us versus what we agreed to. Mm. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have a third thing to look at and say, hey, we agreed on this. Like, so I'm having this expectation. Like, what's going on? Is that wrong? Like, is there something else going on? And so it just enables harder conversations to flow more easily because we've done some of that work.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You have either an expectation or, an understanding of what a requirement is, and if something's not being met, then the issue is not the other person. It's what this agreement is amongst you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I really like that. It's a way to address it like bluntly and directly, but also, I mean, it's not that you can't do it tactfully either, right? But it just, you can actually address the issue head on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for a 50-50 partnership, like how that's kind of a superpower in a way, if you're really able to do that, and reach an understanding on tough issues where two people might quite reasonably have opposing viewpoints.
And like a milestone in our relationship a few years in, I think it might have been after we hired our first coach, which was a major milestone. But this whole like organizational chart concept started popping up, and we had to, I remember we were at like a Bob Evans or something having a conversation about that, and we ultimately had to open up the conversation around, okay, if we disagree, who makes the final call? Because up to that point it just was like, hopefully we'll work it out and be unified, but we had to have that conversation, and for whatever reason we agreed that Josh would be the one to make the final call on things if we ever disagreed. And from then on out, there were multiple scenarios where we flat out disagreed, and I just said, okay, well, you make the final call, and he did.
Yeah.
So
well, so you're the company's moving along, you're generating more revenue, you're growing, you've started hiring people. How many employees did you have? What was the highest number of employees, do you recall?
We were small. I mean, it was, I want to say like 11 or 12 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So,
but going from, two guys just grinding it out on your own early on to having 10, 11, 12 employees, I mean, that is, your role, I assume, pretty significantly changed in that process. Mm-hmm. Is that fair?
It did. Yeah, for sure. I mean, primarily because we had other people out there doing the work and doing the installs and the service calls and all that stuff. And so, which was a big transition. Like I know firsthand what it's like to have to let go of things that you feel really emotionally tied to. I mean, because we were the classic, like, passionate about the work, right? And knew nothing about running the business that did the work, right? That was a major aha for me, that the work of the business is different than the business that does the work. And we were passionate about the work of the business. And so then hiring people to say, okay, you're going to go to Mrs. Johnson's house and do this instead of me, and I'm going to let you go without me. Please don't screw it up. Please don't cut holes in the wrong spot on their walls. Like, please.
I trust you.
For the love of God.
Please.
Just please.
Well, but that's, I don't know. That is providing professional services. They're the actual doers.
Yeah.
And that trains on something specifically. And they go out and start their business. This is where we find a lot of young, I say young, but business owners who are early in this business ownership journey have the most difficulty in delegating and letting go, because they've always done it. They might really, really like doing it, but them continuing in that doing role is not going to benefit their growth plans or allow them to grow. So what was there a light bulb for you and your partner? Was there anything specific that you recall saying, if I don't make this change, like
Totally.
nothing changes?
Totally. I mean, the big milestone for us was about 3 years into the business. We were still, struggling, not making much money, overwhelmed all the time. And just, we knew that there was more to this entrepreneurial dream than we were experiencing, but we just didn't know how to do it. We just didn't know how to make it work. And so about 3 years in, a friend of mine recommended this book called E-Myth and the Entrepreneurial Myth, and which is a business classic at this point. And I took this on vacation. It was me and my wife went to this all-inclusive for vacation, and so I took this book with me, and like the whole time, she's like, pay attention to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, babe, you've got to read this chapter. Like, this was the most eye-opening thing I've ever experienced. And it just blew my mind. It was like the first business book I read, and it showed me that there was so much more, and everything I thought I knew about business was basically wrong. And so I had this major aha experience when I read this book. And so I shared the book with Josh. He read it, his mind was blown. And that was kind of like this point, this tipping point where we realized if we want to really do this, like, we need someone who's been there and done it. Like, we need a coach to help expedite the journey, because look, we can take the next 10 to 20 years to try to figure it out, or we can hire someone who can cut that in a third, because they've just been there already and they can just tell us what to do and ask us the right questions and give us the right tools. And so we reluctantly made the decision to hire someone, which is a whole story in and of itself, how we found him. But we couldn't afford it, honestly. There was a huge risk. I think it was $1,000 a month to have this guy, have 3 phone calls a month with us. And that was still a decent amount of money for us, $1,000 a month. And so, but we were like, look, choose your hard, right? Comes back to that. It's hard to not have a coach, and it's hard to shell out the cash for a coach. Choose. And so we chose to hire the coach, and it was the best decision we made in the history of our business. And we worked with him for probably 3 years or so. And anyway, so that was, to answer your question simply, like, that was a turning point for us.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to foreshadow a little bit, but you're now a coach, and that sounds like a pretty formative experience, like both for the business, but if I'm reading the tea leaves, kind of for you personally as well.
Well, I think what it did for both Josh and I is it like recalibrated us a little bit as business owners, and showed us here's the part of business ownership that is actually working on the business and not just going and fulfilling the service and building the product or whatever it is. And so there was this whole new world that we were opened up to, and we started talking about sales processes and money and just all kinds of things that we had not talked about ever. Strategy and roles and responsibilities and hiring and managing people and running meetings and all these things that we had neglected and just showed up every day and just done our best. And so yeah, it was light bulb moments for us, and we grew tremendously. It was actually funny because in the beginning it was $1,000 a month, and then we transitioned with our coach, and he said, here's another option. He's like, or I'll coach you for free, and I will take 20% of your additional profit. So like if you make $100,000 in profit this year, or last year you made $100,000 in profit, this year you make $200,000 in profit, then I'm going to take 20 grand. And so we were like, deal. Done. For sure.
Like Shark Tank.
This guy's dumb. What an idiot. And so we did that. And then after a year, we had doubled our company. And he's like, hey, remember that contract that we signed? And we were like, we tried to get out of it. We were like, yeah, but it was actually because of this, and it was because of this, and we got this vendor and this relationship and this one huge referral partner. And he's like, yeah, but none of them have contracts with you. I have a contract with you. I'm like, crap. So we had to write him a big check.
Yeah.
And then we went to $1,000 a month. We're like, let's switch the deal back.
Well, you live and learn, right? But
you do.
But like what a formative experience that sounds like just kind of single-handedly changed the trajectory of the company. How many do you remember how many employees you had at the time that you hired the coach?
Oh, was it maybe one?
One. And so like after this experience with the coach, like you guys just were able to think about
none.
the business and not be in it or be the business for going forward after that.
Actually, we had none. It was still just the two of us.
Yeah.
After 3 years.
Okay. So this is I think this is a really cool thing because it's part of the business lifespan that people don't talk about. So you don't have any employees, but you guys learn a lot, and you have this new vision for how you're going to be and what your roles are going to be, and then you start hiring people left and right, right? Mm-hmm. So just on a nuts and bolts level, did you all have cash set aside for payroll? Did you use a line of credit? Did you? It doesn't sound like you took on investors or new partners or anything. So, like, just from a day-to-day cash flow perspective, how did you guys manage that growth?
We were fairly conservative. Like early on, we kind of divvied all of the revenue or the profit up into percentages. And so certain percentage went back into the bank, a certain percentage went to Josh, a certain percentage went to me. Like we just kept it simple to always make sure that we were always living below our means. And even if that meant that Josh and I got $300 that month, because that was all that was left over. Like that's what we did. And so we stayed fairly conservative. And so, we didn't do any line of credit. We didn't take out a loan or investing or anything. We just tried to manage it with cash early on. So we were both somewhat conservative financially. Of course, that doesn't line up with me getting my truck repoed, but
well, but it's an experience that informed how you proceeded afterward. Okay, but you're hiring people, and you obviously you've got this coach who's doing some great things. What was there? I'm just curious. What were the challenges that you found going from one or two, even up to like 10 or 11 employees? You started the business when you were young. I take it you didn't have much leadership or management experience.
No,
but it's one of those classic things that people who are good what they do become managers in the corporate world, and the companies don't provide them by and large with the training on how to be as good of a manager as they were of an employee doing whatever they were doing, right? So, but you're the owner now. You don't have a choice.
Right.
There's just got to be some really cool nuggets here from your experience.
Yeah. So one of the things I remember our coach really pushing into was every time we kind of hit the ceiling individually or as a company where you just felt like you're at capacity, and you felt like you needed to hire someone else to create more capacity, there's risk there, right? Because you're like, well, what if I hire them and we don't keep making money, or our revenue drops, or whatever happens? Especially more of the peacemaker side of me, like the idea of hiring someone and not feeling like I can be loyal to them and to provide for them and their family for a long time, like that stresses me out. Like that's a huge risk. And so the thing that our coach really helped us work through was it's one thing to decide to hire someone and to say they're going to do this. It's another thing to say, now that you're not doing those things, what are you going to trade those activities for that are going to continue to add more value to the business? And I feel like that's where many entrepreneurs don't like reframe the situation and say, okay, if you're going to delegate 20 hours of your work every week, what can you spend 20 hours doing now that's new, that's going to increase and elevate the business so that you eliminate that risk? And when you think about it that way and you start measuring, man, if I did 5 hours more of this and I did 5 hours more of this, and if I actually spent time doing this, which I've never been doing, right? How much more revenue, how much more progress could we make? And so you have to have a little bit of a vision for it. But then it's not only the vision, then you have to do it. Mm-hmm. Then you actually have to change your habits, which is emotional, right? You have to be willing to let go and not just jump back into the things that that make you feel good. Because here's the thing, is like going and installing a TV and hour and a half later, seeing the finished work, leaving the house, like that feels good. I checked a box, you instantly feel that gratification, that productivity. But sometimes when you're not doing that and you spend time working on the business and you do planning or strategy, or you go to networking events and you're planting seeds, like you don't get the immediate gratification of the work that you're doing, though that can be the most important work that you're doing. And so there's such an emotional and psychological component to the growth and to letting go and to hiring and trading those activities for new ones that our coach had to work with us on. And it was tough. I mean, yeah it was tough.
That is tough. I speak from personal experience. It is so tough, especially if you're doing something you already love, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I love working with small business owners, and I love deal work. And if I'm not doing it, it's like an adjustment to like do a podcast or, spend more time on LinkedIn or networking events. They have tremendous value, but I think there is something to that. I don't see the actual tangible product at the end of that networking event, right? Because it doesn't happen every time where you leave with a client,
And that's why when someone tells me they want to start their own business, I'm like, but do you? But do you? Mm-hmm. Like where do you see this going? Because there's a difference between owning a business and being self-employed. Do you want to be self-employed, or do you want to own a business? Mm-hmm. Because owning a business means that you're going to be doing a lot of stuff that you don't even know you're going to be needed to do. That's going to be intangible. That's going to cause you to have to read books and to become a different person. You're going to have to evolve as a human in order to truly run a great business and to grow it and scale it. And it is not all that it's cracked up to be. And it's going to challenge you more than you could ever imagine. And it's more than just you having fun doing the thing.
I think you're right. And we see this a lot when clients are looking to sell and they ask us about the process. And usually one of the things that we find immediately within minutes is that you don't really have an asset. You are self-employed, you have a job, you pay yourself, someone else isn't paying you, but you've got a lot of work to do if you want something that's a sellable asset, right? And I know personally, I think one of the things that I found to be really challenging was the just this psychological component of getting out of the doing and getting into like the leading. because I've never been trained on that.
Yeah.
There's no founder CEO school.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a, fly by the seat of your pants. Hopefully you learn sooner rather than later on those things. But, well, I want to get to your exit, because I think it's the way it happened, or the structure that it took. I want to talk about, because I don't think a lot of, it's not the most common type of exit. So, but I do want to I want to go off on a little bit of a tangent.
Sure.
Right. You've met someone who wants to start their own business, or who thinks they want to start their own business. What are their, I don't know, in true listicle style or fashion, are there like 2 or 3 things that, man, you've really got to look at this? You have to assess your personality. I mean, obviously there's money and time and life circumstances, but like from a psychological or a mental or emotional perspective, like what are those things that you really want to evaluate if this truly is right for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think you nailed it. It's like, if I were sitting with the person, I would be asking them a lot of questions about their personality, their wants, their goals, their ambitions, what's really motivating them at their core. Like, I would want to know more about who they are, because many people think they want to own a business, but they really don't. And if they really knew what it was involved, like they really don't. And so, like, how comfortable are you with risk? How comfortable are you being uncomfortable? How comfortable are you not making money for a while? What's your runway for how long you can not make a dime and still be okay? Especially if you have a family. Are you willing to go network? How comfortable are you with selling? Right? How strong is your network? Rate it 1 to 10, right? So you've got to really evaluate who am I, and because not everybody is born to have the drive to be an entrepreneur. I read a book called Drive, and it literally there's a gene that many entrepreneurs have that other people don't have, that causes them to have this insatiable need to go and to build and to create and to solve problems and to take risks and to do the things that no one else in the world will do. Mm-hmm. There's literally a genetic coding to it. And so I would ask questions. But then the second one is there's so many people that have an idea for a business, and they're passionate about it. They love it. They're good at the work. But having a model that will generate profitable revenue consistently, where there's a market for it, it's a completely different question. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's one thing, it's like, no, I'm starting a plumbing company. Like, of course there's a model for that. But if it's anything that's outside of just a traditional business, like really challenging, like just because you care about pottery doesn't mean that you can have $1 million business in pottery where you're making $200,000 to $300,000 a year in profit. Like, is there really a model here? Have you analyzed it? How is this going to work? And many times they haven't really thought it through.
Yeah, there's definitely a planning element.
Yeah.
This in theory is a really great idea.
Yeah.
What the market says about that idea is a completely different question, right?
And I think that's why there's a huge difference between people who start a business who have never owned one for the first time and people who have owned a business for a while and then start a second business or a third business, is now they know exactly what it's going to take. They know exactly who they are. They know exactly who they're going to need to hire, who they need to surround themselves with. They know how much capital they're going to need, how long it's going to take. Like, they know a lot of those questions because they've been there and done it once or twice. Whereas doing it for the first time, there's just so much that you don't know.
So many blind spots.
Yeah, so many blind spots.
I hear you. I think that's a really good point. All right, so can we jump into your exit?
Yeah, which is a joke, but we'll jump into it.
Well, it was successful. You're gone. You're out. No, but okay.
I did exit. So
I said bye.
I said peace.
Well, and but you sold to your partner, right? Your 50% share. You were out. So was there a thought that, hey, we should figure out if we can just sell the company because I want to be out? Did you approach your partner to say, I think I'm ready to go? Like how did it come about, and how was it how did you get to a point where you thought, if you want my share?
Yeah. Well, it was a pretty unique. I say that, but maybe it's not so unique. In 2018, I'll say this. At the beginning of 2018, I did not see a world where we were not continuing this journey of growing and running this business and expanding. And we had visions to scale into multiple cities and all this kind of stuff. And we were doing tons of coaching and so investing in coaching, that is. And so this company was my baby, and it's all I saw in my future. And then in the summer, like fallish part of 2018, I just started waking up every day with this like wrestling in my spirit. Like the best way to describe it is internal turmoil, where all of the other spheres of my life felt good, but when it, like my professional life, I felt unresolved. Something was going on. I didn't know why. I didn't know what. I didn't know when, but I started to realize, okay, there's something that's going to have to change. And that took me a while to wrestle through because I was so emotionally attached to my existing plan. And like had so many great relationships with the clients and my employees and our future. And so, but at some point, after lots of journaling, I started journaling for the first time, kind of out of necessity. I needed somewhere to process all the different thoughts in my head about this, and getting counsel from friends. And so I ultimately came to the decision that it was time for me to transition out. And at this point, I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I didn't have like this just huge lump of cash or anything. Like we were paying ourselves okay, but nothing crazy. And so, but I just knew in my spirit. So one day I went home and I was like filled with tears, and I was telling my wife, and I just said, look, I don't know why, but I'm supposed to leave this company. I'm supposed to do something different. And she was very like wants security, a little bit anxious about like
sure
things like that. And so, but she saw this conviction and like vulnerability in me around this, that she was like, I'm in full support. Like I see you, and like I know this is what you're supposed to do. And so, but again, I had no idea what I was going to do next. So I started having conversations with my business partner, and I just basically filled him in on where I was, where my heart was, where my headspace was. And I wanted to come to him, not to say this is what I'm doing, but to say like, help me work through it.
Right.
Like I just wanted us to be on the same page, and you help me. Like, let's talk about it. And so we started having those conversations, and he's an amazing person. And so he was like, I support you 100%. Like if God's leading you to do something, God's calling you somewhere else. Like who am I to say no, or you shouldn't do that? And so he was very supportive of that. So we started working through it, and it really wasn't until the time, like nearing the end, really, that I had more of the confidence and the epiphany that coaching was going to be the next thing. My wife had been telling me for years that I should be a business coach, and I was always like, oh, that's what people do, like when they're in their 60s and they've had 17 exits. Like, who am I? Like, classic imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we just started talking about it, and it was funny. Like my partner Josh, there was a time that kind of in the midst of trying to figure out a lot of the terms and talking more about the transition and stuff, I came in to his office on a Monday morning, and it was actually a really hard conversation that didn't go well. And this was on a Monday morning, and I got up to walk out of the office, and he's like, "Hey, John, I just want to let you know," and this is before. No, that Monday morning is the morning that I told him that I wanted to start a coaching business. And so I was getting up to leave, and he said, "Hey, John, really quick, just so you know, me and my wife, we went to visit her family in Northern Kentucky this weekend, and on a Friday night, I had a dream. And I had a dream, and it was so vivid that I wrote it down the next morning, and I saw you at coffee shops, like networking with other entrepreneurs, and I saw you at a whiteboard teaching and coaching people, and so I don't know, it was like such a cool God moment that just encouraged me and propelled me forward with more confidence and support from him. Like he testified to it as well,
Right.
you know, so.
Oh, that is such a cool experience.
Yeah.
That is-
Anyway.
and how lucky though to have a partner that was that understanding
Yeah.
and kind of accepting of, like, you know,
Yeah.
your individual journey and what that meant, not just for
Yeah.
you, but like for him and the company too, right?
Yeah. But it was tough. Like,
Oh, no doubt.
like the whole thing became tough, you know, it's like, no matter how good of friends you are with someone, when you go through the exit process, the sale process, it's you, no matter how much you love that person, at the end of the day, you still end up fighting for what's best for you. And it's a tough position to be in. And so we still had to work through a lot of stuff, and it was kind of hard on our relationship for like the year and a half afterwards,
Right.
because of some of those conversations. And the other challenging part was I was the primary salesperson for the company still. I had all of the referral partner relationships and all the major client relationships, and I was the one out there doing networking. And Josh at the time, like, if he had to go to a networking event, he'd lose sleep like for the 2 weeks leading up to it. Like, he was more of a back end guy.
Yeah.
You know, the finance and the admin and the process and all that stuff. So that was a big transition, and he was losing not only a partner, but he was losing the primary salesperson for the organization. And so there was a lot there too.
Well, and you know, from a practical logistics level, no shareholder agreement or partnership agreement, no buy-sell agreement that says here's how this is going to be done in the event that one of us is ready to go, right?
Yeah.
So how did you all navigate that? Like, you know, it's both of your baby, right? And now, and each of you are probably, I would imagine the company was successful precisely because, you know, the things that you did really, really well were really compatible with the things that Josh did really well. And so ish. Perhaps more successful than if you were just, you know, replicas of the same person.
We organically complemented each other's strengths, but we didn't have some of the tools in place that I know now through EOS. That I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had had EOS like years prior before I discovered it, like it would have made a game changer. But part of that was like our role clarity. Like we were both 50-50 owners, and but on a day-to-day basis, we kind of non-verbally fought for who was going to be the leader of this, or who was going to run the team meeting, and who was going to do this, who was making the final call on this. And so we both wanted to be the visionary on some days, and we both wanted to be the integrator or the COO on some days. And so we just didn't have that like top of the organizational chart clarity on our roles, which created tension. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll say, and you probably would have gotten to this anyway, but we worked with our first coach to help, because he had some M&A experience. He actually had an M&A, a broker company,
Okay.
so he knew all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we're like, hey, James, will you help us out with figuring out all this and what the company's worth and like starting point? Because Josh and I also, we wanted to simplify it. We didn't want it to be this drawn out, complex thing. Like we both want this to happen. We both are for it. Let's not make it more complex than it needs to be. So, so James, our first coach, he put together the spreadsheet. He had us fill in the numbers, and we looked at the number, and I was like, that's a lot smaller than I was expecting.
Yeah.
That's a really small number. And it taught me in that moment that just because you have pride for your business doesn't translate to the valuation of the company from someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the business was not actually worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we kind of negotiated. But he paid more than he wanted, and I took less than I wanted. We kind of had to meet in the middle a little bit. But it was uncomfortable. It was like a light bulb moment for me that serves me well now, because now I can have better conversations with my clients around setting clear expectations and knowing your numbers and the things that you need to put in place that are what an investor or someone that would buy your company would actually look for. Like, what did they care about? Not just what do you care about? And so it just completely changed my perspective on buying and selling a business.
Yeah. There's that cognitive dissonance between my emotional attachment to this company and it's all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you know are in it versus, like, as an asset, what is some disinterested buyer looking at and how are they valuing it? And for first-time sellers, and certainly in your shoes, like, it can be a really difficult process. And good counsel, good buyers know how to navigate that and not kill the deal before it even starts. But it is such an emotional component that when you think about like finance and M&A, it's not just hard numbers. It's like actual personalities and people's history with something they've built.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, though, but so you're out, and you knew that you were going to coach, or this is what you wanted to do. How did you find EOS? I'm curious, as opposed to hanging up the shingle to say, "Hey, world, I'm a coach now." Like, which is kind of like almost how you started the first company. But what I'm curious, what led you, or how did you get to EOS?
So I started the coaching business at the beginning of 2019, January 2nd. And when I started out, I was being mentored and coached by another coach. So he had been someone that Josh and I both work with. He's here in Lexington. And so I started off just because I didn't know any better. And I honestly had no experience coaching for myself. And so I started to try to replicate him and his model and even his personality. And it took me a while to realize, like, no, I just need to be myself. I don't need to be Mark. I need to be John. But you just don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And so, but it was, he's the one that actually recommended that I read the book Traction, which goes over the whole EOS model and system. And so I read Traction, because I just was in like read books. Now I'm a coach, like I need to be reading like a book or two a week, like I want to make sure that people are getting the overflow of me, and that every time I share things, it's not draining me, but it's just the overflow, because I'm growing me all the time. And so, so he recommended Traction. I read the book, and it was just this like light bulb aha moment in reading this book. And I was like, where the hell has this been my whole life? How have I not known about this? And if we had had this 5 years ago, like, we probably would be double our size. We would be way healthier. Like, things would look different.
Right.
And so I resonated with the system, with the simplicity of it, with the timelessness of its tools and concepts and the way it's all packaged. And my heart resonated with it so much. But at the time when I started coaching, I started off, my business model was like one-to-one coaching. If you have a pulse and a paycheck, I'll coach you, and maybe a need, I don't know. Charging way too little, right? So one-to-one coaching, and then I started group coaching on Zoom. I had a couple of mastermind groups that I started building and leading. And then it was in the summer of 2019 that I started also doing EOS. Okay. And it was actually a law firm was my first client. They allowed me to be a guinea pig, or they were my guinea pigs. So yeah, but then it was over time, over the first couple of years, that I ended up kind of burning the boats and getting rid of the other two coaching services and going all in with just EOS.
Right.
So it was kind of a blend at first. But I was trying to just figure things out. I was experimenting and giving myself permission to fail and learn. And again, coming back to the there's no incentive like no alternative, I suddenly found myself with no consistent income, not a ton of savings, but with a lot of time. And so I networked my ass off. I called everybody in my circle. I got their opinion on what I should do. I called getting advice. I set up coffee meetings. And it was funny. I was looking back a few months ago. I like scrolled back through my calendar, like back in 2019 and 2020. And it's just funny when you look at what your schedule was 4, 5, 6 years ago. And like every week was filled with coffees and lunches and phone calls. And it's like, that's what I did. You grind and you do what you have to do. Yeah. And that just continued to lead to people saying like, hey, I think I need a coach. And it's like, great. So anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know, but
no, but it's symptomatic of like those entrepreneurs who become successful. Like if you don't have the time and the willingness to put in the grind and even do things you might be uncomfortable with, right? People who are good at what they do, who come from the corporate world, for instance, they may not know how good of a networker or a schmoozer they really are, right? Yeah. It has a negative connotation, but it's, I don't know, I find it to be one of the more fun things I get to do, and I look forward to this stuff. But there was a lot of trepidation initially, but if you can just get over that, whatever the hump is for you, it's a huge difference maker. But let's, for those who don't know, tell us, like, give us a 30,000 foot view of what EOS is and kind of just in general how it works. Yeah.
So EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So that's the acronym. And it's high level. It's a complete system with simple tools that are designed to help entrepreneurs really get what they want from their business. Whatever it is that you want. And everybody wants different things. But whatever you want from your business, this toolbox is designed to help you get it. And so I take leadership teams of businesses on a journey to help them master these tools, implement these tools, utilize these tools, and roll these tools out into the whole company so that everyone's using them. And at a very high level, the three things that they're designed to do is, we call it vision, traction, healthy. So vision, just from the standpoint of getting everybody on the leadership team first, 100% on the same page. Most are not. Most leadership teams are not on the same page at all, but getting them rowing in one direction, totally aligned, totally on the same page with who they are, where they're wanting to go, and what their plan is to actually get there. Traction, meaning that I help them instill discipline, accountability, focus. So when you look around, the leadership team is actually executing on that vision every day. And healthy, meaning that I help them become more cohesive, more functional, more open and honest, more vulnerable with each other. So they actually love spending time together every day, because most leadership teams don't. It's sad. But what I've learned is that really, as that leadership team goes, so goes everything else in the company. And that's one thing I learned in my previous company too. Our business coach like drilled into us is that your business is always going to be a direct reflection of you. Your strengths are going to reflect into the business. Your weaknesses are going to reflect into the business. And so the same thing is true about this EOS journey, is that when the leadership team becomes stronger and they achieve vision, traction, healthy, well, guess what? Over time, everybody in the company starts to be on the same page. They all start to be in lockstep with the vision. They all start to have the tools to execute more effectively and to gain more traction every day. And they all start to kind of flow up and roll up into a healthy, cohesive department or team in the organization as well, where people trust each other and love each other. And so that's the very high level of what EOS is meant to do for a company. And there's obviously a lot more involved tactically.
Sure.
But that's what it's all about.
Well, but that's a really interesting way of phrasing that issue, because I think most people do think of the environment, the culture, the way things get done is kind of a top-down, issue, right? And if everything, if you think of like, who's the famous leadership coach, John Maxwell, right? Everything rises and falls with leadership, right?
Yeah.
But this idea that, but I've never really thought about it in the sense that you just described it, which is like everything flowing down being a reflection of leadership or of the owner or whoever.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not.
It's just going to be true.
It's kind of like daunting and challenging and inspiring kind of all at the same time. That's that's really heavy.
It's John Maxwell's law of the lid, right? Like you as a owner or you as a leadership team are automatically the cap on everything else that's attached to you. And that's one thing I've learned the most over the years, is just that when you grow, the things that attached to you also grow, whether it's your friendships or your family or your kids or your employees or your partners, like whatever it is, like the things that are attached to your life start to flourish more when you start to flourish.
Right.
And when you don't, like those things start to die, become unhealthy.
So tell me, I guess what I'm really curious about, just having trouble articulating it, is the common themes, common problems that you kind of see across the board with your clients, right? Whether they're small company or whether they're larger, mid-size, or regardless, are there things that you tend to see in these initial meetings that are like, this is precisely where we're going to start, and things that repeat themselves over and over?
Of course. I mean, the first kind of step in our process with a client is a free 90-minute meeting. And so and that's with me and the leadership team. And in that 90-minute meeting, a part of our agenda together is me learning more about their organization, like where they've been, where they are, where they're wanting to go. And we kind of dig into some of the challenges they're facing and their strengths and their vision and what they're wanting from the company. And so, after I've done, 100 of those or whatever, like you just start to notice the same sort of patterns and the struggles. And, it's the thing that some of the things that I find most commonly are, companies get to that 10, 20, 30 people in the business, and the business, the ability to manage it well has outgrown the owner. And the thing that got them to 10 employees is not the thing that's going to get them to 30, or the thing that got them to 50 is not going to get them to 100. And so they've realized that their current organizational habits are not scalable. They're just not. And they need more of a systematic, process-driven framework to get people on the same page and to better manage people. Many times they are not on the same page with their vision. They think they are, but as soon as I start asking some questions and I want everybody to say, what do you want in 3 years? What do you want in 3 years? Everybody has a different answer.
Right.
Everybody has a different answer.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a problem. And so, but they typically know that. Like they don't really know what they want from the business. People issues. You find this a lot in family businesses where you got people on the team, whether it's leadership team or in the company, that you just don't know what to do with. There's an issue, but there's history there. There's an emotional attachment. There's family dynamics. They're holding you hostage because they're good at their job, but they don't fit your culture. There's just so many people challenges that people don't know how to navigate. That's the reason they come to EOS. And then sometimes like they just stalled out as a business and they're like, we just don't know what the next step is. Like we've been doing 4 or 5 million in sales for the last 3 to 4 years and we want to be at 10 and we just don't know how to get there. And so we're here to like hopefully have something that's going to unlock a new chapter and help facilitate growth and scale. And so, so yeah, there's a lot of different reasons for why people would choose EOS or even come to that 90, but there's just some of the common threads.
Well, so we have like 2 buckets, right? We have the vision bucket, leadership team not on the same page, or not really knowing, or their visions essentially being somewhat different.
Yeah.
And then you have kind of operational issues on the other hand, like what are we doing with these employees or these people, or to use a phrase from Traction, which I got my copy from you, is this person in the right seat, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but have you come across a situation where the leadership team is there's a difference of opinion, or there are different visions amongst the leadership team, and you have some of them like, but I don't actually want what you want, right? I mean, where does that, as a coach, where does that leave you in terms of like how you're now going to approach everything else you do with this particular client? I mean, that's got to be, there's some conversations that are going to occur outside of your presence that are going to be very difficult, but how does that work when you're dealing with a client and you just realize, man, there might be too much of a rift in terms of what everybody sees in the future for this company?
It's a great question, and it does come up. It doesn't happen too often, because usually you have a visionary at the table who's able to sell the vision, right? And other people can say, I've never thought about it that way, or that's not really what I was thinking. But after you say it that way, that actually feels kind of exciting. So usually through conversation, we realize that people are a lot more closely aligned than they thought around what they really want from the business, or they're able to and willing to be sold by the visionary. But sometimes you hit an impasse and 2 people aren't on the same page. And I would say you probably find this more in partnerships in the owner's box than you do in other parts of the company. I get really excited. Of course, I'm not in it, right?
Very true.
I'm not in it. But I get excited when that comes out, because all progress starts by telling the truth. Like, let's just tell the freaking truth about it. Let's not mess around. Let's not skirt the issue. Let's not keep avoiding it and living miserably. Let's just talk about it. Let's get it on the table. And either we solve it, we're going to solve it either way. We're going to solve it by getting aligned and someone maybe compromising or whatever to keep the relationship alive, and to still be a united front to our team. Or we're going to solve it by you all deciding not to do business together anymore. Right? Like, what are the options?
Right. Which is, it's on the table, but, obviously not the preferred option when people step in, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right?
Or another option is that, hey, you still reap the benefits of being an owner, but you don't live in the business anymore. Why don't you go do something else that really brings you a lot of passion and energy and joy that you want to focus on, and you're going to keep your 30% equity in the company, but then you're going to let the leadership team really go in the direction that they feel called to go. So there's lots of different scenarios.
But it's, I don't know, like what I find to be interesting, fascinating, whatever. What I think is interesting as an owner is what we're talking about, though, is just like effective communication, right? Like it's not rocket science.
Wait, talk about it?
Talk about it and be honest and, feel like you're safe with the people you're with to express what it is that you feel like you need to express. And have like there is a huge level of vulnerability that you have to have, but this just openness to be honest with the other people you're in the room with. It's such a simple thing that is so incredibly difficult. And I would imagine, I'm curious from your experience, like the reason they reach out to a coach as well. Like maybe the fact that they can't double in size or they can't get past certain issues is just the symptom. And the real problem is they just haven't really learned how to effectively communicate with each other.
You hit the nail on the head. All the tools that I teach and all the exercises that we go through, all the things that we're doing together in the sessions, at the end of the day, it's all designed to help the team have constructive conversations and to share their hearts and to get on the same page. We're just using tools to facilitate that at the end of the day. And you'd be amazed how many of my clients say, Jon, at the end of the day, like, yeah, you're a coach and an EOS implementer, all that stuff, but at the end of the day, this is therapy. This is business therapy. And I have clients now that they literally call it couch time. Like you can't see it, but like there's a little couch setup lounge over there. And they look forward to the quarterlies and the annuals because they know that they can come and a part of our session is going to be moving over to the couch and me facilitating things on the issues list and creating safety in a place where they can talk about hard things and to cry. Like I got a call from a previous client a couple days ago, and it was like three tech companies trying to merge into one business in order to increase the multiple and the valuation of the business. Because it was like one main software and then two like add-ons, and so they were trying to combine them all into one. And they wanted to use EOS to help facilitate creating one company and one leadership team and like a more united front. And so I had never done something like that before. It felt really challenging, but this started about 3 years ago, and I worked with them for about 2 years until they successfully did all that stuff and they sold their company. And so shortly after they sold, they stopped the EOS process because they had kind of done their work.
Right.
So shortly after, I reached out to Jenny, the visionary, and left her a message and said, hey, just thinking about you, how you doing? And never heard back from her. And then a couple days ago, she called me out of the blue. It's like, Jenny, so I answered and I was like, oh my gosh, I love seeing your name on my phone. That's so cool. How are you doing? And she's like, I was going through my voicemails and cleaning it out, and I finally got to the one that you left me that I never responded to. And she's like, I just wanted to call and thank you. Yeah. She's like, we sold the business and made lots of money, but we kept 40% in the deal, in the private equity company, and they just resold the business a year later, and we got like 258% return on the 40% that was left in. And so that just hit my bank account yesterday, and none of us ever have to work again, ever. And but she said, but Jon, like the thing that matters the most to me is that the 7 of us who came together to do this EOS thing from different backgrounds and different personalities, we did not like each other at first. And going through the whole transition of the sale, because we ran on EOS and because you created safety in those sessions for us to talk about hard things, we're still friends.
Yeah.
We still text each other. We still joke around. Like we still travel together, and like we love each other. And it's because we held a space in the room for people just to talk about hard stuff. And like that is, sorry, a little emotional just talking about it, but
that is so awesome. That is like, I don't know. I can tell that you just love this work. And I can tell that we've not worked together, but I know from our experiences just getting coffee and even this one today, it's like you just have this wonderful way of like extracting information and getting people to talk and be open and be vulnerable. I think that's, I don't know, just congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
That's such a wonderful
Thank you.
thing. And I know just one of the things that I love about business owners is people who are so passionate about what they do and wanting to be able to share it and help other people along the way.
You can't be successful if you're not.
You can't whatsoever.
Yeah,
I
you
totally
can't.
agree. What's next? I mean, you're in the midst. You're 6.5 years now into your EOS journey as an implementer. By the way, are you a visionary or are you an integrator? What do you think you are, or are you just purely implementer now?
So there's the rocket fuel crystallizer assessment that will tell you, give you a literal score from 0 to 100, like your percentage of visionary or integrator after answering these 40 questions.
Okay.
So I've taken it twice, and both times I'm like high 70s on visionary and like low to mid 70s on integrator.
Oh.
So
okay.
I
That's
have
interesting.
kind of a unique personality where I can really resonate with both, which the downside is that it gives me a constant identity crisis. But the upside is that I think in the session room, it helps me to be a better implementer because I can always tailor the conversation to what's needed the most. Like, do we need to like boil this down to what we're doing next and like create a game plan? Or do we need to like leave more space for brainstorming and like ideas and things like that? Like, so I can resonate with the integrator and I can resonate with the visionary alike because of my personality.
Yeah.
That hurts me though, because I'm like, if EOS like for some reason didn't work out in the future and I had like go get a job, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
what I would lean into.
Those are usually incompatible. Like the idea of someone having these big, crazy ideas, like the big, hairy, audacious goal, and then the people who are actually boots on the ground, taking action and getting stuff done day to day.
Yeah.
And I find that I don't do well on the latter. I'm okay with thinking up cool things, or
That's
things
why
that I think
that's
are
why
cool.
I gave you that mug. World's best visionary.
It's an overreach, but I appreciate it. So I'm curious. We talked a little bit about like the things that you would tell or want to ask people if they came to you and asked for advice on whether they should start a company or if it's entrepreneurship is right for them. You've made a really cool pivot from, in one sense, you were a business owner and you were still a business owner, right? But you pivoted in the sense of what you were doing. I'm curious. Most people, I think, quite rightly, are very scared of pivoting, like mid-career. Grace, you are just starting out. You're a few years out of college. And, the idea of like someone my age, like maybe I left the practice of law or maybe I don't, whatever that career pivot looks like, whatever it is, like it can be hard. Do you think that it's the same kind of self-assessment as like whether to start a business generally, or is it like something more specific about like this idea of pivoting from really, I mean, let's be frank, one identity to what you think might be something completely different?
Can you simplify and rephrase that question?
Well, I did, in my defense, I did ask you like a 4-minute question, right?
Yeah.
The question, I guess, is when we talk about those things to help someone figure out if business ownership is right for them, right? We're looking at, as I understand what you were saying, is like there's a lot that's just personal, psychological, right? And not just sheer willpower. When you're talking with someone who might be considering a pivot in their career in midlife, what are there things that that would be helpful for them to consider, or is it kind of the same stuff again?
I think it's the same stuff.
Yeah.
Is the thing that I'm looking to pivot to, is this going to, is it going to bring me energy and joy to do it? Do I have the talent? And am I built and wired to do this thing? Because if either one, and then it's the hedgehog concept really, but at a more of a minute level, like Jim Collins, like the hedgehog concept with any company to go from good to great, like you have to have the three things. You've got to have the passion for the thing you're selling and the thing you're doing. You've got to have the greatness and the skill and the talent to do it well and to be the best. And you've got to have something that generates profitable revenue. And if either, like any of those three boxes are unchecked, just say no. You got to have all three for it to work, which takes a lot of self-reflection and honesty and wading through the emotional excitement about the idea. And that's the thing, like so many people get so excited about the idea of something. Many of them are visionaries, right? And they have this entrepreneurial spasm. It's like, oh my gosh, what if I did this? I'm going to leave everything. This is going to be the greatest. And it's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Well, it's
self-reflect.
hard to detach from the idea that you've
Right.
come up with that you know is so, that you think is so good.
Right. Yep.
And I can see like, well, this is a great idea. It's just a great idea for somebody else. It's not a great idea for you.
I've had like 17
Right.
of those
Yeah.
that I did nothing with, except for spend months creating spreadsheets around and trying to figure out the model and all that stuff. But when push came to shove, it just wasn't the thing
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And so you've really got to be honest with yourself. And I don't know, I typically lean a lot into how much peace, how much like internal peace do I really have?
Camera died.
It's all good.
But I really want you to finish because I was kind of digging where we were going with like this kind of, I don't know, level of self-awareness that
Yes,
you can
self-awareness.
you can objectively look at something and or yourself even to make the right decision.
But like usually, you know, one thing I've learned when it comes to decision making is there's your head, there's your heart, and then there's your body, like what your gut is saying. And I used to always just kind of chalk it up to like, this is the way I feel, but it's actually three very different things. Like your head is, okay, what makes sense on paper? Is this logical? Is this rational? Like, would anybody else who's an outside perspective, like put their stamp of approval on this and give me wise counsel and say, yes, do it. There's the heart. Like, is this really what I want? Is it really what I want? Or am I confused? Or am I escaping from something else? Right? Is this truly what I want? And then there's your gut, which is just like, do I really have a sense of peace about that? Or is there anything at all that feels unresolved and I'm lying to myself? Right? Like I dated quite a few girls before I got married, and many of them I justified getting to a relationship because I'm like, you know, I'm sure I'm going to marry this person, you know, but that little thing in my head, like just told me from the very beginning, this is probably not going to work out for this reason, but I ignored it. And so you got to really be conscious of the little check engine lights that you might be feeling about this idea, and don't ignore them.
It's true. And I think there are people who aren't sure if they can truly trust their gut, right? And maybe it's imposter syndrome, or maybe it's just they've not been in this situation before, so they're not sure if that gut instinct is actually leading them in the right direction, because why would I trust that? I've never actually encountered X, Y, or Z before, right? I don't know, but it's something that has guided me more accurately after 9+ years of ownership than it did in the first year.
Yeah.
Because in the first year, you're like, well, my head, I've run my numbers, I've done this, you know, what's the deal?
Yeah.
And then after a while, you're like, I can make a decision now in a split second because my
experience.
I'm trusting the gut. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like if you're pivoting or starting something new, like it's less about your idea and more about asking yourself the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like what are the questions that I haven't been asking myself to really analyze this? ChatGPT, right? What are the top 50 questions I should ask myself when I'm thinking about this business, starting this business?
Yeah.
Right.
It's fascinating. All right, this is we're almost at the end. You've been a great sport.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been a great question asker.
This is our lightning round, and so
much pressure.
Get ready. All right, you've referenced several books today, and I think that's been great. What's the one book that every business owner has to read?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard because it depends on their season of life and of business. So that's a really hard one because 10 come to mind. But I mean, obviously, like Traction goes over EOS. So I would be doing a disservice to myself if I didn't say Traction. E-Myth is probably number 2. It's a very easy read. But honestly, another game changer was Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. It really just shapes your perspective on prioritizing profit in your business and gives you kind of a more simplified way to do your accounting, especially for smaller businesses, maybe under $1 million in sales or whatever. It's a great tool.
Your go-to productivity hack.
Oh man, again, I overanalyze these questions because I'm like, well, it depends. I mean, if you're small, having a great CRM, it is insane how many people who are relying on consistent sales do not use a CRM to track and to manage their follow-ups and the pipeline and keep track of their to-dos and all that. So they just let it live in their head all the time. So this is a little bit more about being a productive salesperson. I'm an entrepreneur, but using a CRM. I'm gonna throw out maybe a little bit of a different. Probably most people answering this question would go to technology, right? Productivity hack.
Sure.
But I'm gonna say that for many entrepreneurs who are hitting the ceiling in their own capacity, productivity hack is getting an assistant. And most people wait way too long to delegate administrative tasks and activities to someone else that loves to do it. And again, will instantly free up 10, 15, 20 hours of that entrepreneur's time to go do things that are going to create more value for the business. So it's a little bit of a different spin on your question, but that's something that comes to mind.
No, it makes sense. But we talked about delegating and figuring out that new role for you as an owner and how so many people find that so difficult. So the act of doing it itself is like the biggest hack for your growth.
So I was talking before I hired my first assistant for my EOS practice. I was talking to another EOS implementer who'd been doing it for 15 years, and I was like, "Hey, Rip, I'm about to hire my first assistant. I'm really excited." And he's like, I was talking to Gino years and years and years ago, who wrote the Traction book, the founder of EOS. He's like, I was talking to Gino years ago, and I told him that I hired my first assistant, and Gino looked at me and said, congratulations, you just decided to increase your practice by 50%. You just made a conscious decision to grow your business by 50% by hiring an assistant. And I think that many entrepreneurs don't have that mindset. They see it as a cost rather than an investment that frees them up to do other work. And so it is a true hack. Many people know about the idea of having an assistant, but very few people actually do it.
Or effectively know how to use it. And you're absolutely spot on. Okay.
Matt, do you have a productivity hack?
Hey, then you're next, by the way. So you're
man, do I have a productivity hack? Yes, and that is to do everything that I'm super passionate and really want to do, I do it first thing in the morning. Right? I mean, yes, I come in, I get coffee, I spend a couple minutes just cleaning out the inbox, but usually by 8 or 8:15, I'm wired. I've got 2 to 3 hours where I know I'm at my best, and that is just when I kind of zone out everything that I possibly can and just focus on those 2 or 3 things that I just love to do and want to do. And there's some people who say like, oh, do the thing that you dread the most, get it out of the way. But I find my afternoons are better spent like just ticking off boxes. But that 2 to 3 hours in the morning, if I get through the 2 or 3 things that I love doing, it just kind of, I don't know,
sets the tone for the day.
Sets the tone for the rest of the day and makes me just feel, I don't know, it like builds momentum rather than like coming in knowing I'm like, oh, this drudgery of doing those things I don't want to do.
What I hear though, the hack, if I could summarize that, is it's designing your schedule to fit your wiring. Because not everybody should say, I'm going to do it like Matt. People should say, I need to design it so that it's working for me and it's making me productive, but I'm being intentional about the design of it rather than just waking up and doing whatever feels right in the moment.
Totally.
Is that what you're saying?
I agree. And I think part of that is, knowing what your schedule looks like, knowing what your deadlines are, right? Because there's some days you just have to do what you got to do because you have to. But yeah, I've focused on like, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this well, like having the self-awareness to know this is when I can concentrate and be at my best, and I want to spend it on those things that I love doing the most. And how do I plan my day around it?
Isn't it cool how so much of our conversation today comes back to self-awareness?
Yeah.
What about you?
I like to use, I don't know if you all have heard of Pomodoro timers, where if you're having trouble focusing, you set a timer for 45 minutes, and then when that timer's up, you get to take a break, and then like go on a walk for 5 minutes, or go get another cup of coffee or something, and then you go back to your 45 minutes or your 50 minutes or whatever. And I use that all of undergrad, and then I use it now too.
Give us like a practical example of how that's helped you, like a specific situation.
In undergrad, I hated putting together presentations. It was like my least favorite thing. And so I was like, if I'm going to put this presentation together, I'm going to give myself 45 minutes, see how much I can get done. And then then I make it a race for myself. You
kind of gamify it a little bit.
Yeah.
I like that though. But it gives you 45 minutes. It's a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But you can do anything
fully
for 45
focus,
minutes. Deep dive.
Yeah.
And get through it.
And most of the time when that timer hits at 45 minutes, you're like, well, I'm kind of on a roll now. And then you just keep going.
Yeah, I love that.
I love the game theory approach.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. I ask this because I constantly get unsolicited advice from other people. And they're like, oh, well, you should do this or you should do this. And I have to really focus on like who I should really listen to. That, right? Like, why would I trust you?
You've never built anything.
Right.
But you're an expert.
But you're an expert now. So but I think this is one of the more interesting things to talk about with other business owners is what is the worst advice anyone has ever given you?
Gosh.
He's struggling because he's like, I've gotten a lot of bad advice over the years, but
Honestly, this is a really hard question for me. I think that I generally, even if I'm not fully resonating with what someone's telling me, I typically find a way to eat the meat and spit out the bones, and like figure out what can I learn from this, or like I'm gonna hear them. And so I don't really know, if I'm being honest. Nothing immediately comes to mind.
This is not peacemaker in you. This is like you just extracting exactly what you can.
Yeah. Or like I've also learned enough about life and business to know that what may work for me isn't going to be what works for them, and they may be giving me a piece of advice because that's what worked for them. And I may not resonate it, but that doesn't mean that it's not good advice for them, right? So just allowing some of the uniqueness of perspective to be a part of it, rather than saying like, this is good advice and this is bad advice, and here are the two categories.
Fair enough. I like that. I like that approach.
That's a good answer.
That's a good answer. Well, this has been so much fun.
Yes.
Thank you for hosting us. Thank you for being a phenomenal first guest interview on this podcast that I have such visions for.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome.
It's going to be hard to top this first experience. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Awesome.
If you liked this video, hit the like button and subscribe. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and check Jon out too. We'll put his stuff down in the description below, and we'll see you next time.